Welcome back to Royal Report Daily. Have you ever wondered why, in an age where every move of the royal family is tracked by satellites and high-speed cameras, two of the most important children in the British line of succession are basically invisible? This question is no longer just being asked by people on the internet. It is being whispered in the hallways of Buckingham Palace and discussed by constitutional experts, people who study the laws that govern how a country is ruled. Something very big is happening behind those heavy stone walls. And this time, the royal family's usual rule of never complain, never explain is not going to be enough. For the first time in centuries, the question of whether the crown's future is legitimate, meaning legally valid and real, is being connected to a set of documents, medical reports, and missing signatures that simply do not add up. Lady C has recently come forward with claims that there is an active investigation into the births of Archie and Lilibet, and the reaction from Meghan and Harry has been nothing short of explosive. But what exactly has been uncovered? And why is the timing of this investigation causing such a panic in Montecito? The mystery starts with a detail so small that most people would not even notice it. Yet it is exactly the kind of clue that investigators look for. It all comes down to a single number on a birth certificate. In the United States, birth registration follows a very specific system managed by the CDC, that is the Centers for Disease Control, and individual state offices that handle official records. On Princess Lilibet's public birth record, there is a geographic area code used to identify where the birth took place. For the state of California, where the Sussexes claim Lilibet was born, that code is 104. However, analysts who carefully studied the documents pointed out a very obvious problem. Lilibet's document apparently shows the code 105. Here is why that matters. In the federal coding system, 105 does not belong to California. It belongs to Colorado. This mismatch has sent the royal commentary world into a frenzy. If the birth took place at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, as the official story states, how did a Colorado code end up on a California document? Some people say it is a simple administrative mistake, but others believe it points to something far more deliberate and calculated. Rumors have been going around for a long time that the Sussexes may have used a surrogate, meaning another woman carried and gave birth to the baby for them. This practice is completely legal in the United States, but it would have massive, earth-shattering consequences for the British monarchy. If a child is born through a surrogate in a different state, and then registered in California, the paperwork often becomes a very complicated and tangled mess of amended certificates, meaning forms that have been changed or corrected after the fact. Could the 105 code be the accidental fingerprint of a process the public was never supposed to see? When you are seventh in line to the throne, a paperwork error is not just a mistake. It is a potential constitutional disqualification, meaning it could legally remove you from the line of succession. But the paper trail, or the lack of one, goes far deeper than a 3-digit code. To understand why this is such a big deal, you have to look at what is called the Yellow Folder Protocol. For over a century, every royal birth has followed a very strict and almost sacred tradition. When a royal baby is born, a signed announcement is placed on a decorative stand called an easel outside Buckingham Palace for the entire world to see. This is not just for show. That announcement is signed by the senior doctors, called the men in midwifery, the king's or queen's personal physicians who were present or who verified the birth right away. We saw this happen for Prince William. We saw it for Prince Harry. And we saw it for all three of William's children. It is the ultimate proof that the child was physically born from the mother's body, a legal requirement for the line of succession that goes all the way back to the 1700s. Yet, when Archie was born in 2019, the easel was famously empty of signatures. The announcement was posted, but the names of the doctors were missing. The palace blamed the speed of the announcement, but critics were not accepting that explanation. When Lilibet was born 2 years later in America, the protocol was abandoned entirely. There was no announcement, no signatures, and no verification by the royal medical household. This break from tradition has created a massive legal gap. Without the verification of the Crown's own doctors, the public is essentially being asked to just take their word for it. But in a family where trust has been completely shattered by memoirs and Netflix documentaries, simply taking their word for it is a very high price to pay. The absence of those signatures is the foundation on which every other rumor has been built. The story gets even more complicated when you look at the people who were supposedly in the room. In Santa Barbara, the medical professional connected to Lilibet's birth was Dr. Melissa Drake. She was a well-respected OB-GYN, a doctor who specializes in pregnancy and childbirth, with a successful practice. But shortly after the news of Lilibet's birth became public, something very strange happened. Dr. Drake reportedly closed her practice without any warning and essentially disappeared from public life. Some people say she simply chose to retire or move away for personal reasons. But the timing has raised 1,000 questions. In the world of royal investigations, there are no coincidences. Why would the doctor who delivered a British princess suddenly walk away from her entire career? Critics of the Sussexes suggest she may have been bound by an extremely strict non-disclosure agreement, a legal contract that prevents someone from speaking publicly about what they know. Or perhaps she did not want to be the public face of a birth story that she could not fully support. This disappearing witness has added yet another layer of mystery to the story. If everything was straightforward and honest, would the doctor not be proud to have her name connected to such a historic event? Instead, there is only silence. And in the empty space created by that silence, the rumors of surrogacy and legal maneuvering have only grown louder. This is not just about one doctor. It is about the integrity of the medical record that secures a child's place in history. If you think this sounds like a modern conspiracy theory, you have not read your history books. This is not the first time the British monarchy has faced a crisis over the legitimacy of a birth. Back in 1688, there was something called the warming pan scandal. When King James II's wife, Mary of Modena, gave birth to a son, rumors spread that the real baby had died and a random infant had been secretly smuggled into the birthing room inside a warming pan, a metal container used to heat beds. The public was so suspicious that they demanded witnesses be present at every future royal birth. This is literally why the Home Secretary, one of the most senior government officials, used to have to be physically in the room to make sure no switching happened. While we have moved well past the point of a government official standing next to the bed, the legal requirement that a royal child must be born from the body still remains the law of the land. The 1701 Act of Settlement is very clear. The line of succession is limited to the direct physical heirs of the body. Legal experts have pointed out that even if Archie and Lilibet are the biological children of Harry and Meghan, if they were carried by a surrogate, they are technically not eligible for the throne under current UK law. Parliament would have to pass a specific new law just to change the rules for them. This is the extreme legal option that Lady C and other insiders are hinting at. If an investigation proves that a surrogate was used, the king would not even have to remove them. They would be legally disqualified automatically. The historical ghosts of 1688 are suddenly feeling very present and very modern. Then there is the issue of what we actually see. In the world of online content, visuals matter enormously. But when it comes to the Sussex children, the visuals are a constant source of frustration for the public. We have all seen the photos, grainy, black and white, or taken from behind. But when we do get a clear shot, the internet's digital forensics community immediately goes to work. There have been numerous claims that the few photos released of Archie and Lilibet have been digitally altered. From changing hair colors, going from sandy blonde to bright red in just a matter of months, to height differences that do not match the reported age of the children. Some critics have pointed to the 2021 Christmas card, where Lilibet appeared much smaller than a child her age should be. Others pointed to the famous photo of her playing in the grass on her first birthday, which some artificial intelligence experts claim shows signs of compositing, meaning the child may have been digitally edited into the background. While Sussex supporters argue that this is simply a mother's desire for privacy and her personal choice of photo style, it adds more fuel to the fire of those who believe we are not seeing the real children. Why the secrecy? Why the digital editing? If you want to stop the rumors, the easiest way is to step in front of a camera and let the world see the family as they actually are. The continued use of heavily styled photography only makes the children feel like digital ghosts haunting the line of succession rather than truly occupying it. Perhaps the most damaging evidence against the official story comes from Harry himself. In his memoir, Spare, Harry describes the birth of Archie with a level of detail that was clearly meant to feel intimate and personal. But to many readers, something felt wrong. He claims that they arrived at the hospital, Meghan gave birth, and they were back home in Windsor just 2 hours later. On paper, this sounds like an incredible and inspiring story. In reality, it is a logistical nightmare. The hospital they used, Portland Hospital in London, is at least an hour's drive from Windsor Castle on a good day with no traffic. If you factor in the time needed for the actual birth, the standard medical observation period required after having an epidural, a pain-relieving injection in the spine, and the paperwork, a 2-hour total turnaround is almost physically impossible. Even more strange was Harry's description of using gas and air during the birth. He claims he used so much of the laughing gas that the nurse had to bring in a completely fresh tank, and that they even ate Nando's chicken in the delivery room. Critics have pointed out that this sounds far more like a scene from a Hollywood comedy than an actual royal birth at one of London's most expensive and prestigious hospitals. These inconsistencies, in Harry's own words, have led many people to believe that the stories in Spare were carefully and strategically written to create a specific image, but whoever wrote them did not account for the fact that people would actually check whether the timeline made sense. If the details of the birth are being made up or exaggerated in a memoir, it raises a very obvious question. What else is being stretched or invented? This brings us to the current tension between Harry and Meghan, which many insiders believe is reaching a serious breaking point in 2026. According to people close to the situation, the couple is in a brand war, a conflict over how to manage their public image and their children's future. Harry is reportedly terrified of the destructive power of social media and global fame. Having lost his mother in such a public and absolutely devastating way, he wants Archie and Lilibet to be completely shielded from all of that, to live as normal, ordinary children in California. He does not want them to be public figures at all until they are old enough to make that choice for themselves. Meghan, on the other hand, is a businesswoman. With the launch of her lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, and her various media projects, she reportedly sees the children as an important and valuable part of the Sussex brand. She wants them to receive the same level of public visibility and recognition that Prince William and Catherine's children enjoy. She believes that by keeping them hidden, they are losing their public value and their emotional connection with the audience. This fundamental disagreement, privacy versus profit, is said to be causing very serious arguments behind the scenes. Harry wants a shield. Meghan wants a spotlight. And as the children grow older, this conflict is only going to get louder and more difficult to contain. Are Archie and Lilibet children, or are they content? The answer to that question may determine whether the Sussex marriage survives the next few years. While the Sussexes battle it out in Montecito, the palace is far from sitting still. King Charles is in a very delicate position. He wants to be a loving and supportive grandfather, but he is also the head of a 1,000-year-old institution. Recent reports suggest that Prince William is pushing for a much tougher approach. As the future king, William is reportedly furious that the line of succession, the very thing he will one day be responsible for, is being clouded by these unanswered questions. He does not want his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, to grow up in a system where the rules only seem to apply to some people and not others. There is talk of what is being called a cleanup operation. This could involve a quiet but firm request for the Sussexes to provide verified DNA results or medical records to a private royal committee. If they refuse, a piece of legislation called the Removal of Titles Act, which has been floating around Parliament for some time, could suddenly gain a great deal of momentum and political support. Charles is a man who has always preferred to avoid direct conflict, but with his health being a constant concern, he knows he needs to resolve the Sussex situation before he eventually passes the crown to William. The king's silence is not a sign of weakness. It is the sign of a man who is very carefully weighing all of his options. When the move finally comes, it will likely be swift, legally precise, and final. While the debate over birth certificates continues, a new and perhaps even more complicated legal battle is building on the other side of the Atlantic. It is what observers are calling the paradox of the American prince. We are currently witnessing something that has never happened before in history. Two children, Archie and Lilibet, holding high-ranking British royal titles while being raised in a country that literally fought a bloody revolution specifically to get rid of those kinds of titles. Critics in Washington are starting to ask a very pointed and uncomfortable question. Can you truly be a prince of the United Kingdom while living as a private citizen in California? This is not just a question of social manners or etiquette. It is a potential constitutional crisis for both nations. The United States Constitution is famously cautious about foreign titles of nobility, meaning royal ranks granted by other countries. Yet the Sussexes have been accused of using these titles to try to influence American policy and public political conversation. From writing open letters to Congress to making high-profile media appearances, the prince and princess labels are being used in a way that some experts say makes a mockery of the American democratic system. It creates a false sense of elevated status that the public is being expected to respect, even though those titles carry absolutely no legal weight in America. If Archie and Lilibet are being prepared to use these titles as commercial tools in the U.S., the palace may find itself forced to step in to protect the crown from being pulled into American partisan politics. The tension is reaching a point where the U.S. government may eventually have to formally clarify the legal standing of foreign royals who are living and working on American soil. Behind the scenes in London, there is a group of people who very likely already know the answers to every question we have raised today. They are often referred to as the men in gray, the senior advisors and intelligence contacts who manage the day-to-day workings of the royal household. For years, there have been quiet whispers that a secret dossier exists, a confidential file containing the full, unedited truth about the Sussexes' time in the UK and the exact circumstances surrounding their departure. This dossier is said to include everything from internal investigations into bullying allegations to the detailed medical records connected to the children's births. Why has this information not been made public? In the very high-stakes game of royal chess, information is the ultimate source of power. As long as the palace holds these files, they have a very powerful deterrent, a reason for the Sussexes to think twice before making any more damaging public moves. If Harry and Meghan were to release another tell-all book or documentary that crossed a final line, the gray suits could quietly leak the very documents that would completely dismantle the Sussex narrative. It is a cold, calculated standoff. The palace is not staying quiet because it is afraid. It is staying quiet because it is waiting. They know that in the court of public opinion, the side that speaks last usually wins. By keeping the truth about the birth certificates and the missing medical witnesses in reserve, the monarchy ensures it always has the upper hand in any legal or public relations battle. As we move further into 2026, the story around Harry and Meghan is shifting from a united front to something that looks more like a professional separation. We have seen a noticeable increase in Harry's solo appearances, particularly his trips back to the UK for charity events and ongoing legal proceedings. These trips are being viewed by many as a scouting mission, a quiet way of testing the waters for a potential solo return to the royal fold. Meanwhile, Meghan remains firmly based in California, focusing on her lifestyle brand and her American media projects. This gradual splitting apart has massive consequences for the children. If Harry and Meghan are truly moving in different directions, what happens to Archie and Lilibet? If Harry were to eventually move back to the UK to take on a limited royal role again, the question of where the children would live becomes an absolute firestorm. Would they stay in Montecito as American celebrities? Or would they return to the UK to be educated and raised as British royals? Some believe that Meghan would never allow the children to leave her side, as they are her most direct and personal connection to the royal institution and the global visibility it provides. However, if the separation rumors turn out to be true, the palace might see this as an opportunity to bring the heirs home, ensuring that the children are raised within the traditions and protective structures of the monarchy. This tug-of-war over the children's future is the hidden story running underneath every public move the Sussexes make today. At the very heart of this entire saga is the concept of legacy, what a person or institution leaves behind and how they will be remembered. King Charles is very much aware that he is a bridge king, a transitional figure connecting the long, stable reign of his mother to the future reign of his son William. He does not want his chapter in history to be defined by a messy family feud or a scandal involving questions about the legitimacy of his own grandchildren. This is why he has been so reluctant to take the extreme step of stripping their titles. He still holds on to the hope of a reconciliation, or at the very least, a quiet resolution that does not damage the dignity of the institution. But Prince William represents a completely different generation of royal leadership. He has watched the damage that half-truths and media wars have done to his family up close, and he is reportedly far less willing to simply play the waiting game. William's focus is entirely on the long-term survival of the crown, and he understands very clearly that a monarchy built on unanswered questions is a monarchy built on sand. For William, the Archie and Lilibet question is not just a family matter. It is a security matter. He wants a clear, transparent, and undeniable line of succession so that his own children never have to face a challenge to their own legitimacy. The tension between the king's deep desire for peace and William's firm demand for clarity is what will ultimately decide the fate of the Sussex children. We are approaching a turning point. The public's patience for a privacy-first royal narrative is running out fast. In a world where openness and transparency have become the new standard, the Sussex strategy of secrecy is starting to look less like a protective shield and more like a serious liability. Whether it is the mystery of the 105 Colorado Code, the missing medical signatures, or the shifting visual record of the children, the gaps in the story are becoming too large and too obvious to keep ignoring. The next 12 months will likely be the most critical period in the entire history of the Sussex Palace divide. With legal cases reaching their conclusions and new media projects on the horizon, the truth, or at least some version of it, is bound to come out. Whether that truth will be a shocking revelation that changes absolutely everything, or a quiet admission that simply settles the debate once and for all, remains to be seen. But one thing is completely certain. The world is watching, the palace is waiting, and the clock is ticking on the Sussex secrets. Now more than ever, this conversation needs your voice. Are we watching the slow-motion collapse of a very carefully constructed narrative? Or is this all just one giant misunderstanding? As we wait for the next move from Montecito or the next leak from the palace, the debate over the future of the crown continues to grow. Don't forget to subscribe to Royal Report Daily and share your thoughts in the comments below. This is a story that belongs to all of us. Stay tuned, because the biggest twist in this royal drama may be the one nobody ever saw coming.